Here is the details about final income tax return for self-employed person. National tax collection employs self-assessed tax payment system by which each taxpayer pay a visit to a tax office to declare one's income to determine the amount of tax one should pay. Then each taxpayer make arrangement of paying the tax. Self-employed person must calculate its business income of the year from January to December, then file final income tax return for it. Business income is the amount left after necessary expenses are deducted from gross income or sales figures as a result of its business activity. Necessary expenses mean the amount required to earn the income, such as expenses on purchase, distribution, general expenses, and so forth. Whether you need to file final consumption tax return or not, we will explain it later on consumption tax taxable business owners. Final income tax return for business income earned during that year from January to December must be made from the following year's February 16th to March 15th to a competent tax office. As a rule, the place of tax payment is your address. You need to submit itemized statement on income and expenses along with final income tax return form. If you have been approved as a person in the blue paper income tax return category, you need to submit a statement of accounts for blue paper income tax return. In case you will pay the whole amount of tax in cash, the due date for the payment is March 15th. However, declaration of income tax refund can be made without waiting for February 15th. If you fail to declare final income tax return by its due date of March 15th each year, additional tax for not declaring final income tax return and/or overdue tax will be added to the amount of tax you should pay. In case any disguised act and/or concealment were found in the case above, heavy additional tax, which is heavier than additional tax for not declaring final income tax return, will be charged. Here is the procedure for filing for your final income tax return. The first step is to create an itemized statement of income and expenses, statement of accounts for blue paper final income tax return. In case you had other earnings aside from your own business activity, please prepare documents to prove that. For instance, if you had salaried income, prepare withholding tax slip for it. This is because to calculate the amount of income tax you should pay, you need to fill in the form with every income and earning of the year. If necessary, you have to prepare documents related to each tax deduction. If you need tax deduction for medical expenses, you need to prepare detailed statement for medical expenses. If you need tax deduction for housing loan, you need to prepare account of special deduction for housing loan. Step 2 is to fill in the application form of final income tax return referring to other documents you have prepared. It is easy to create your final income tax return by following the National Tax Agency's homepage. Your amount of tax will be automatically calculated and the form is done by entering necessary information by following guidance. You can also create itemized statement of income and expenses and statement of accounts for blue paper income tax return on the National Tax Administration Agency's website. Step 3 is submit your final income tax return form to tax office. Direct submission or submission by ETax are available. Direct submission is to send your copied form by post or bring it to tax office. We will explain about ETax system on the next page. Step 4 is to pay the calculated amount of your tax. There are 5 ways to pay tax. We will explain it later. You can file your final income tax return via ETax online filing system. In this way, you do not need to come all the way to tax office. To use ETax filing system, you can choose either of the My Number Card method or ID and password. Here is the way of paying tax with My Number Card. In this method, you need to prepare 1. Smartphone that can read My Number Card or 2. PC and IC card reader writer. From January 2022, smartphones that can read My Number Card can be used instead of IC card reader writer. You need to acquire your ID and password before start using ID and password system. To obtain your ID and password, please visit tax office along with your personal ID, such as driver's license, insurance card. Here, we are going to show you how to pay your income tax. There are 5 ways to pay the tax. We are going to show you one by one in order of appearance. 1. Online payment. By using an online tax payment system called ETax or an internet banking system, you can pay tax. Prior procedure is required before start using ETax system. 2. Tax payment by account transfer. If you are to pay individual declared income tax, you can use this tax payment by automatic transfer account method. Before using this method, you need to submit a written request for an account transfer or e-application for it to a competent tax office. 3. Payment by credit card. This will be accepted from each web page. Note that settlement fee will be charged from your credit card company. 4. Payment at convenience stores. Please copy the barcode from the National Tax Administration Agency's homepage when you use this system. Note that the accepted amount must be less than 300,000 yen. 5. Payment at counter. This is a payment at post office, bank or competent tax office counter. From here, we will explain about consumption tax. Consumption tax is widely levied on distribution of articles, products, services, paid by consumers and delivered to the national government by business owners. Business owners who have taxable sales figures of 10 million yen or more during the reference period of that taxable period must declare final consumption tax return. This reference period means, generally, 2 years prior to the year of making final consumption tax return. In other words, if you had 10 million yen or more taxable sales figures 2 years before making this year's final income tax return, you need to file final consumption tax return aside from final income tax return. Note that even when your taxable sales figures did not reach 10 million yen during the reference period, if your taxable sales figures exceeds 10 million yen during the specific period, then you will be obliged to file final consumption tax return. This specific period means from January to June of the previous year of which you are obliged to declare final consumption tax return. The above is a rough explanation whether you will be deemed as taxable business owners of consumption tax. In case you have already applied for approval for special case on taxable period or approval for selective taxable business owners, the situation may be changed. Self-employer's declaration of final consumption tax and its payment must be done by March 31st of the following year. If the year's amount of consumption tax exceeds 480,000 yen, you will need to declare an interim tax return in the following year. This was the guidance of self-employer's final income tax return. Thank you.